Peace and welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii. Thank you so much for tuning in and happy Monday. Folks, we got a lot to talk about. First, let's talk about the State of the Union that the president is expected to give tomorrow. What should we expect? Should we expect him to talk about the case of Tyre Nichols and policing? Should he talk about the relationship he has with the new Republican House Speaker? So much. We're going to check in with Dr. Jason Nichols to get his take on the State of the Union address. Also, the Democrats have approved to reshuffling the presidential primaries for the 2024 presidential season. What impact does that have on black voters around the country? We'll have a conversation about that. Also, the food company Aramark is under fire for serving culturally insensitive foods to one school district. I'm going to give you the latest and the breakdown of details with Brother Michael and Hotep and see, is it really culturally insensitive? We'll have that conversation. And then later, we'll check in with a young leader by the name of Kim Poole to talk about how her organization has organized freedom rides to educate the next generation about the civil rights movement. So stay with us. All of that, and of course, your comments on today's edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Let's go. All right, folks, welcome to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. First and foremost, happy Monday. We are continuing to do our due diligence as we're celebrating Black history for the year of 2023. And folks, I hope that as we wrap up almost tomorrow, we'll make it the first week of the month, that you're using this time to learn all about their history, the history of Black folks, named and unnamed, major and minor, folks that have made a huge, huge contribution to the progress of this country and to our people across in America and around the globe. So happy Monday on this Black History Monday. Folks, we got a lot to talk about. First and foremost, let's talk about the State of the Union the president is expected to give tomorrow. Of course, this is his second State of the Union, but it is the first State of the Union where the president is talking to a chamber of Congress where the Republicans hold the power in the House. And so the question is, how will the president respond to the national election results from November? Now, there's already talk saying that the president will try to come into the conversation as being a unifier, trying to get from those across the aisles to talk to each other, to shake hands with each other, to approve policy. But I'm wondering, is that a good strategy? Let me check in with my brother, Dr. Jason Nichols, who serves as a lecturer for the University of Maryland out of the African American Studies Department. You can check him out here every Monday here on The Culture, and we're always happy to have his analysis and insight. Brother Jason, thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. How you feeling, brother?
Hey, I'm feeling blessed. Thank you for that great introduction. Thank you for having me, as usual.
Absolutely. Love to have you. All right, bro. Let's talk about the State of the Union address. This is the address that the president gives to give us, the constituents, the American people, an update of where we are in this country. The last big political brouhaha moment was this balloon, the spy balloon that came overseas, this China balloon. They shot it down off the coast of the Carolinas, so that was taken care of. But then you saw on the domestic side, there's the talk, of course, about the case of Tyree Nichols. President Biden has spoke a little bit about that last week. There's the ongoing conversation about what the new Congress is going to do with Hakeem Jeffries and Kevin McCarthy as the heads, and so much more. And of course, we can't stop talking about the Ukraine-Russian war. There's a lot to talk about in this State of the Union, but what should we expect as Black people and as Black voters in this country?
So firstly, I think that the president is going to spend a lot of time touting his successes. That's the first thing he's going to do, is kind of throw it in Republicans' face that while they have tried to give doom and gloom to the American people, that he's at 3.4% unemployment, which is the lowest in 54 years, that he's created and brought back manufacturing, created 800,000 manufacturing jobs, 12 million jobs overall. You saw Black wage growth in the last year actually outpaced inflation. So he has a lot of things to actually tout and say, hey, we're on the right path. Don't let these people fool you. We're actually doing pretty well. Which I think the American people need to hear, because I think right now there's just this kind of overarching pessimism. And, economically, while some, I think, to say that we're not going to face a recession, I think is wrong. But it won't be, a long enduring recession. Our economy has proven to be really resilient under the president's leadership. We've seen also a lot of gains in terms of the policy that he's passed. He's literally one of the most effective, and I'm not saying this because I'm a Biden kind of guy. I'm really not. But, when you look at policy that he's been able to get through, he's one of the most effective presidents in recent memory. I mean, when you talk about the CHIPS Act and the Burn Pits Act, and then, the bipartisan infrastructure and things that people haven't been able to get done, he's been able to get through. And of course, inflation reduction, American Rescue Plan, all of those kinds of things, lowering drug costs for Americans. So he's going to talk a lot about that. Then, of course, he's going to talk about democracy both here and abroad. So hopefully for us Black folks, he's going to bring voting rights into that and talk and reintroduce talking about voting rights. Of course, we know he's going to talk about Ukraine and defending democracy there. He's going to talk about some of the extremism that we face here in the United States, but he needs to also weave voting rights into that. I think he's also going to talk about police reform. Now, we know this is a complicated subject for the president. A lot of people want to see fewer police. He wants to see more police and get more to community policing. And he has to, I think if he really wants to go deep into it, I'm not sure he's going to do that, but he can talk about qualified immunity. He's going to talk, about policing and about Tyree Nichols. And I believe he invited Miss Rovan Wade, I believe her name is. I'm somehow blanking on her last name, but Tyree Nichols' mother and stepfather, I believe, are going to be there. So he's definitely going to touch on that. I think he's also going to bring up, this tagline that he's been talking about for a long time, which is, this battle for the soul of America, that we need to come together. So what you were talking about in terms of, Democrats and Republicans actually working together for the good of the country, he knows that's not going to happen, but he does want to make it seem like he is a uniter. And then in 2024, he can frame it as unity versus division.
So a couple of things around that, Brother Jason. The fact is that strategy might be tone deaf considering the space that we're in. So some voters might say, come on, Mr. President, let's try to get some stuff done. Use your bully pulpit, use the thin margin of victory we got in the Senate to get some stuff done. So, I often question when I see presidents, and of course, Joe Biden's not the first president to do this. He's probably the first recent president to really stress it. But I often see it. We saw it, of course, in the Obama administration. It's like, come on, let's get something done. Let's get some wins under the column. And I think you pointed out some great wins. I don't think he's the worst president, even though, Brother Jason, the numbers don't look good for this man in terms of some of the recent polls. According to a new, and let me just share this with y'all, folks. According to a new Washington Post ABC poll, they say that that 58% of Democrats and Democratic-leaning independents prefer another nominee over Biden. Yeah, so that's nearly 60% of Democrats and Democrat-leaning people who are saying this is not our guy for the upcoming presidential election in 2024. And as you're saying that he's going to tout some of these things, I mean, I think he's gotten the ball moving in a lot of ways, but there's those two big pieces. Let me tell you why I don't see him fully getting black vote into these two pieces. You know it and I know it, bro. Voting and police reform. Like, get those done.
Right.
And guess what? Black people are going to put you back into office.
Right.
Voting and police reform. And I'm not saying that because we're monolithic, but I understand that this is huge. These will be huge wins. Huge wins. And the Republicans know, and they're not going to move. They're not going to budge. You know what I'm saying? They're not going to budge on these policies. These are huge wins. But and then we got to take a quick pause. But do you think that this strategy that he's on, is it going to be effective?
The thing is, Democrats are really good at running away from their accomplishments, and he should have been spiking the football the entire time, and they haven't done that. They haven't really gone out. All we've heard is inflation. Inflation is actually falling now, or at least we're seeing that it's slowing down. But, if you're not going to sit there and talk how many times do we hear Trump talk about lowest black unemployment? How many times do we hear that? But yet you have the lowest unemployment in 54 years. And I have to say it like I'm not hearing it from anywhere else. I'm not hearing about these 800,000 manufacturing jobs when most people, including me, thought it was impossible. Yeah. I'm not hearing about some of these things. I think he's also going to go on the offensive with Republicans. I know we got to go to a break, but I think he's going to go on the offensive and he's going to talk about the debt ceiling stuff. And he's going to start going after Republicans, talking about how they want to cut Social Security and Medicare. And I think that's him going on the offensive against the Republicans. I think he's going to get a little tough, even though he's going to have the kumbaya moment. He's going to say they want to cut your Social Security. They want to cut your Medicare. We just lowered drug prices. No thanks to them. Here, you make a choice there. I think he's gonna do that. He's definitely gonna talk about this debt ceiling stuff and how catastrophic it would be and how we can't play around with that.
Absolutely. Look, folks, we're going to continue the conversation with Dr. Jason Nichols. We're going to take a quick pause. When we come forward, I want to hear your expectations for the President's State of the Union address that he will be giving tomorrow night. What are your expectations, and what would you like for the president to speak on? Stay with us. That conversation continues here on The Culture, right here on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig? When you talk about blackness, and what happens in black culture. We're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind $100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Take some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. We have been talking to Dr. Jason Nichols, one of the lecturers out of the University of Maryland, the African American Studies Department, as we talk about the expectations, your expectations, our expectations for tomorrow's State of the Union address. The president has a plethora of issues, but what are some of the big things that you see that you think that the president will or need to address? Post your comments in our chat section as we have the conversation, and let's continue the conversation with our brother, Dr. Jason Nichols. Doc, thinking about all of the things that you mentioned about how this president is moving forward, I'm wondering if any of this is going to resonate with the American people. And I'm saying that because we just quoted 58% of Democratic-leaning people, folks that were polled, said that they prefer a different candidate going into 2024. If that's the case, 60%, then I'm thinking that the Democratic Party they know this, they see this, they got to look on their bench to see what kind of depth they have, who they have, and the possibilities, who is going to be plan B, who's going to be plan C. They're going to have to see how the president is going to deliver this message tonight, how it will come across. The Arkansas governor, Sarah Huckabee, she's going to give the rebuttal, the Republican rebuttal to tomorrow's State of the Union address. So we know how that's going to go because she worked for President Trump as his communications person during his administration. So, this might just be a lot of pomp and circumstance. This talk about America being great, America is still moving forward, America, we are more united now than we've ever been before. It doesn't feel this way. And I think some people are just not going to go for the bobo. Tiana checked in and said, look, this political climate is not conducive to getting meaningful legislation passed. I think the American people, Black, white, Asian, Latino, I think we all see that. So how does a president get this across that we are at a better place, or the State of the Union is strong, if the American people can see, and all of us know for sure, that there are cracks in the foundation of democracy?
So I think one of the things, first thing I'll say is that Republicans have done an excellent job at making Democrats ashamed of Joe Biden. So they've shown you all the videos of him stammering over words, all the videos of him looking frail and pale, and they have done a really good job at making Democrats feel ashamed of Joe Biden, despite, as I stated before, his numerous accomplishments. And again, I did not support Joe Biden. I was a Bernie guy, so I did not support Joe Biden. He was probably one of the least, one of my least favorite candidates, because he was the farthest in the center, or to the right, I would say. But one of the things you have to do is give credit where credit is due. Now, again, a lot of the things he's gotten done have been budget reconciliation, and they've just been outmaneuvering Republicans. I don't think you're going to do that with police reform. Like they're not going to get outmaneuvered on that. They're not going to get outmaneuvered on voting rights, because their whole thing, as we talked about last Monday, is to make it so that Black and brown people vote less. So they are not going to let voting rights get through. So we expand the franchise and expand American democracy. I think Joe Biden has to call people out from, I know we talk about bully pulpits, but we've got to literally call people out from that really important place where 20 million Americans are going to be watching. And, another 20 million will watch the highlights. He needs to say, look, we stand for democracy, and there are people who are Americans who are in government who literally are standing in the way of democracy.
And you know what, bro? Stop.
Yeah.
I wish a president or an elected official would just say stuff like that.
Right. I think he would.
Like, look, I really do. I wish a president would say, let me just keep it, like, just come out and say, let me keep it 100 with you. Our State of the Union is not strong because why? We don't like each other. We're not in agreement with each other.
Yeah.
I mean, I get it. You know what I mean? This is the part of politics. I mean, I have this love-hate relationship with politics, and one of the parts that I hate is that you're trying to gloss over a simple fact. You know what I mean? It's like that old saying, you're trying to put sugar on.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And it's like, why don't you just tell the American people where we really are? Stand on truth, right? And I don't think as grown people in this country, grown ass men and women, men, black, white, all of these different people, I don't think anybody would be like, man, the president's wrong when he said we're divided. We know that. We know that. We see that in social media. We see it in our homes, our communities, our workplaces. Right. He needs to blast the whole idea of what DeSantis is doing down in Florida, what they're doing in Alabama around these Black History. I mean, you giving a speech in Black History Month, you should be blazing the trail,
right?
Blasting them, right? I mean, you got to, and I'm with you. The bully pulpit has to be used. Let me share with you what Janelle, my sister, checked in and said. Janelle, you said, when I hear people talk about the bully pulpit, when was the last time the Democrats have had a president to breathe down the neck of Congress? Since Clinton, we've been trying to draw moderate Republicans. And there's fear. Like, if you go too hard, and I don't know if this is, because this is not the Republican strategy, this is a Democratic strategy. There's this fear. If you go too hard on the Republicans, they're going to create, their followers and their loyalists and all of these voters are going to come back at you. And you're going to add to the flame of dissension and add to the flame of division. And it's like, but if you don't say something that is true, then the people that stood with you going to see you as weak and not take a hard stance on problems that exist.
Right. I think it's like the Super Bowl, right? Super Bowl is coming up next week. You don't want to give anybody any of that locker room, that locker room quote that they're going to put up on their lockers and they're going to get fired up. You don't want them fired up for a game. You want them to play, pedestrian football, thinking they're just going to win that way. You don't want them coming out, with fire in their eyes. So this is one of the things that the Trump people, when Hillary called them a basket of deplorables, it got them fired up. You know what I mean? And the guy who they were all going to vote anyway, but it really, really fired up their base. So Democrats have to basically recognize, how can we fire up our people without firing up their people? And I think that, again, touting the accomplishments, claiming the civil rights legacy and the diversity, that we have within our party and within our caucus, I think that's the way to go about it, and to talk about important issues that Black folks are really concerned about, and that Americans who are interested in fairness are concerned about. You will, I don't think you lose the center by doing that, and you lose the center by being cowardly, by not standing up, by not saying what you mean. That's how you lose everybody. You lose your base and you'll lose the center. So I think the president needs to talk about his accomplishments, bring up those issues, even though I'll be honest, I don't think they're going to go through. I don't think they're going to be passed. I don't see Mitch McConnell voting for voting rights. I definitely don't see Kevin McCarthy doing it. I think it's going to be really, really difficult to get those things that Black people want. But Black people, just like the Republicans, just like the MAGA people, we want to know that at least you fought for it. You know what I mean? At least you fought. You know, if you look like you backed down because they started getting loud on Fox News, then you look like a coward.
Look, I go back to this again. I don't like to put this idea out there, but I cannot stop hearing when our Madam First Lady, Michelle Obama, said that when they go low, we go high, and how that has become the mantra, it seems like, of the Democratic Party. That is the ultimate goal, ultimate strategy. And I always say, you got to see what was the context of her saying that, and not just applying that same principle to every situation. There are times when they go low, you need to get your ass a little bit lower. Right. Or when they go low, you need to take them down to 6 feet under. I mean, there are moments for that, right?
Absolutely.
And like, if this situation with Tyree Nichols is not an indicator of that type of moment where you have to say to Congress, we're passing this. We're going to pass the George Floyd Justice for Policing Act. And if we don't pass it, guess what? And you start waging war and start weaponizing and start making sure that they hear you loud and clear. Because this whole other stuff, like, look, part of me is like, we can't keep trying to put a Band-Aid on a gashing wound, right?
Right.
And then another part of me is like, I understand, because you're trying to keep, like I said, there are cracks in the foundations of democracy. You don't want to start an all-out civil war or some type of really, really serious political war. But at the end of the day, right is right, wrong is wrong. You cannot negotiate, compromise with people who don't even want to admit that there's a problem. Right. Sometimes it's like you don't do that with your children.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? You put your big boy, big girl pants on and say, look, I'm the adult in the situation. This is what's happening. I'm not asking you. I'm telling you.
Right. And I hope I'm really I'm hopeful that the president is going to do that with, basically you remember when Joe Biden said they trying to put you back in chains.
Right.
Like, that always made me laugh. I mean, I know some people were offended by that, but I thought it was funny. But
right.
I mean, we need a little bit of that Joe Biden, who's going to come out and say, the stuff that, the thing that I think people liked about Trump, the people who like Trump, was that he said it and then he stood on it.
That's what I mean? Hey, you got to respect him for that. Hey, that's how he rolled. That's how he rolled. He could be lying out through his teeth and his ears, but he stood on the lie.
Yeah, exactly. So my thing is, for Joe Biden, he needs to bring out some of that old Joe Biden. They trying to put you in chains and then sit there and be like, what? I said it. You know what I mean? And guess what? There's a lot of black folks that'll be like, you know what I'm saying? Like, yo, what you want me to be?
Look, and look, real quick, as we take our next pause, real quick, this is why black leadership is so important. Because, I'm serious. You know what I'm saying? Black leadership will just say it like you say it. You know what I'm saying? And I know a lot of times people even come onto this space or this platform, they're like, man, y'all seem angry. No, it's not angry. This is just how we talk, teacher. Like, we talk with passion. We don't cut no cards, because life is too short to be sugarcoating a lot of stuff. The seriousness of life, the preservation of life, requires you to sometimes speak hard truths, so that way you can save people's lives. You can help them to understand the urgency of the moment. That's the space that we're in this country. we need people who are going to speak truth to power. Even if it's from the president, the power that is over top of the president is Congress. So speak truth to it. And don't be don't be weak about it. Be unapologetic about it.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? Don't try to appease to the moral sensibilities of a people or to a party or to anybody that just don't understand the urgency of the moment. Because
let me just say one thing.
Joe
Biden needs to recognize he's not Abraham Lincoln. That's not his style. Be you. You know what I mean?
Right.
Joe Biden is, he's not, he doesn't have the oratorical skills of a Barack Obama.
Right.
So don't try.
Don't.
Trump didn't try. Trump was Trump. So be Joe Biden and say, talk about these, high-level policy things, but also give it to us straight. Tell us what the Republicans are trying to take your Medicare. They're trying to make it so your grandmama can't go to the doctor. You know what I mean? They're trying to take your Social Security so your granddaddy can't pay his bills. That's what we want to hear, and that's the kind of passion and fire we want to bring. And yes, you can try that uniter stuff, but it's not really gonna work. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like, sometimes we need a little bit of fire. I like some of the uniting stuff, but sometimes you have to also sprinkle a little truth in there as well.
Yep, and a little ass whipping as well. Little ass whipping, little truth, little ass whipping, and some policy. All right, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, we're going to have a conversation about how the Democratic Party is doing their job of reshuffling their presidential primary calendar. They approved that on this past weekend, and we want to look at what is the impact that will have on Black voters. Stay with us. That conversation will happen next here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol,
we're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate Black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear. Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Folks, thank you for tuning in. We are now want to have a conversation about the presidential primaries that will be kicking off next year as we're working our way up to the national presidential election in 2024. Here's the latest about this, because the Democrats have officially approved a new set of primaries, the new presidential primary schedule. Take a look at this, folks. On Saturday, the Democratic Party they approved reordering its 2024 presidential primary, replacing Iowa with South Carolina. As you know, Iowa has always been the first primary stop in the presidential season. Well, the Democrats have reshuffled that to stress, as they're looking at stressing diversity over tradition, and replacing it with South Carolina, a huge state, and it was the kickoff state for Joe Biden's victory when he ran for president. So they're replacing Iowa with South Carolina in the leadoff spot as part of a major shakeup meant to empower Black and other minority voters, critical to its base of support. The new plan was championed by President Joe Biden, who is expected to formally announce his re-election campaign in the coming months. Now, the reconfiguring would have South Carolina hold its primary on February 3rd, followed 3 days later by New Hampshire and Nevada, which is swapping the caucus it used to hold in favor of a primary. Georgia would vote fourth on February 13th, followed by Michigan on February 27th, with much of the rest of the nation set to vote on Super Tuesday in early March. Let's go back to my brother, Dr. Jason Nichols, lecturer from the Department of African American Studies at the University of Maryland. This is, and I wanted to talk to you about this, Doc, because this is big. Because once you take South Carolina, put it in the top spot, moving Iowa out of it, South Carolina, the base of the power for Joe Biden in his last presidential campaign, had a huge number of Black voters that came out. And now that's going to be the first stop. How much of an impact does this have on Black voters?
Oh, I think it has a big impact. Number one, the thing I like about putting South Carolina there is you not only get Black voters, but you get rural Black voters too. Like it's not, it's in Detroit. Like, you have people being empowered that are rural voters. And it lets it set the tone for the entire primary. Now, I don't think we're going to have a primary, really. I mean, it's going to be Joe Biden as our incumbent president and nominee for the Democratic Party. But I think moving forward, putting Iowa there made absolutely no sense. It doesn't really show you the real demographics within the Democratic Party. And a lot of times you get somebody who wins that and that's they're one and done. They go to other states and they start losing. So putting South Carolina first and then having New Hampshire and Nevada together makes perfect sense because you get Latino voters next. And you're not leaving the white voters behind because New Hampshire ain't got no Black folks,
right?
Or Latino voters. It's primarily white voters. So you've got all of the demographics within the first 2 weeks of primaries being represented, or at least the major demographics within the Democratic Party. But Black folks are the backbone of the party. Everybody knows that. And they should go first. They should set the tone. Who is it that Black folks are going to back? We saw Joe Biden. What did he come in like third in Iowa?
Man, look, hey, Doc, remember he came in fourth.
Yeah, I mean,
he came in fourth. He had a conversation with James Clyburn. Look, this is crazy. Look, I don't know if y'all, I mean, for those who study politics, political science, y'all know this was the comeback of the past 20 years. Like Joe Biden really wasn't even at the top. He wasn't even the first three, I don't believe. If y'all correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think it was either third or fourth. Jim Clyburn helped that man. That's Jim Clyburn, the House rep out of South Carolina. He's a stalwart in South Carolina politics. Helped that man change the whole momentum of that man's campaign.
Absolutely.
Changed the whole momentum. And from South Carolina, all Black folks started voting for Joe Biden. That's crazy.
And not only that, the reason you have a Black woman on the Supreme Court, is in part because of Clyburn demanding it. You know what I mean? Like Clyburn got something back for it. You know what I mean? He was like, look, this is what we want. This is what we want, and that's basically how you get Black women on the Supreme Court. Because he was like, yeah, you want my endorsement? You know how powerful I am in this state? Here's what we want.
And Yeah, and you can't, and you know, so that puts black voters in a huge win column, right? Because you got South Carolina first, and then of course, you know, you got Tim Scott on the other side of the aisle representing South Carolina. So now the Republican Party is going to have to work hard. They're going to have to work hard, and Tim Scott is going to be there. It's going to have to be their point person. This is going to set up a very, very interesting dynamic in this whole situation. Let me get Lana in, because Lana's checking. And Lana, my sister, you always be rocking and rolling with us, and I so much love your support. Lana, you say South Carolina being first in line is critical. Keep in mind, this is a 35% plus black population state, and the Democratic Party is working with Marcel Dixon on a Freedmen's Bureau. Clyburn will lose. Well, let me just say, they're probably, and I'm sure you already know this, Lana, they're probably already having conversations about the what ifs scenarios for every scenario. But trust and believe, Clyburn may lose an election, but he's not going to lose out on power. Never. That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And this president will go back to Clyburn and say, okay, what do I got to do?
Absolutely. He sure will.
What do I got to do? Right?
He sure will.
And so, you know, when you start putting it out like that, so this election, this presidential primary season is going to be very, very interesting to see to play out. Dejima, you checked in and said, look, South Carolina makes very, very perfect sense, considering black people are the base of the party. Like you said, Doc, it's an apparatus really needs to be made in our image and liking. I don't know. Now, the party, and I think Dejima is bringing up a great point. The party is slowly, I would say, shifting to being more, not just diverse, but to be more vocal about its support for black people and the issues that are facing Black America. On the big scale of things, though, Doc, does that strategy work for all of the other groups of people, whether you're talking about LGBTQ, whether you're talking about Latinos, whether you're talking about liberal whites? How does that play in that landscape if the party is starting to kind of shift and maneuver and navigate and lean more towards Black America?
Well, I think one of the things that the party needs to recognize is it's got to be, you know, to use an old George W. Bush phrase, you know, no man left behind, no woman left behind, no non-binary person left behind. So it's got to speak to everybody. But, you know, the fact of the matter is, if you don't talk to black people, and if black people don't think that you are their ally, then you won't win an election. If black people sit at home, and we know that is the goal of the Republican Party, is for black folks to sit at home. Black folks sit at home, they win elections. So this is why you don't have President Buttigieg or something like that, because black folks had their reasons for not trusting him and not wanting him to be, the nominee. And he won Iowa, if I'm not mistaken. You know, you had Amy Klobuchar came in before Biden. Both of them had no chance because black people didn't know or trust them. So to me, it makes sense to set the tone for a primary from now on moving forward by using the states that represent the demographics of the Democratic Party. And the base of the Democratic Party is black folks. There's not even a question.
All right, look, I got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, Doc, I got to ask you a question about this, because my concern is this sounds so good and this is necessary, but how do we make sure that it's not a performative gesture and make sure it gets to something real and substantive? We want to have that question and continue the conversation. Stay with us, folks. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punches! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
The 54th NAACP Image Awards is airing live on February 25th, honoring outstanding performances in film, television, theater, music, and literature. But this year, Roland Martin Unfiltered is nominated for Outstanding News or Information Series or Special. To vote, head to NAACPImageAwards.net, scroll down to Outstanding News/Information Series, select the category. You have to click on hashtag Roland Martin Unfiltered Black Votes Matter Election Night Coverage. To submit your vote, you will need an email. Only one vote allowed per email. Voting ends on February 10th at 9 p.m. Vote today.
Folks, thank you so much for tuning in to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Folks, we are continuing the conversation about the Democrats who have now approved reshuffling their presidential primaries, putting South Carolina, a predominantly black voter state, at the forefront of the presidential primary season, removing the state of Iowa. And people are asking the question, what impact will this have on black voter turnout and just the overall participation of black voters in next year's presidential campaign? I've been talking to my brother, Dr. Jason Nichols from the University of Maryland, the Department of African American Studies, to get his take, and certainly want to hear from you. So post your comments in the chat as we're streaming live on YouTube, on Facebook, and of course on Black Star Network. And let's continue the conversation. All right, Doc. So when we're talking about this, one of the big questions that I have is making sure that this gesture or this move that the Democratic Party has done with moving South Carolina and putting other predominantly black voter states at the forefront of the presidential primary season, how do we make sure that it's not a performative gesture? How do we make sure that it's something of substance behind this? Is this a sign that the Democratic Party are now going to be a little bit more leaning toward the issues and the interests of Black America?
So I think, first of all, you're going to see, when people are crafting their agendas and crafting what they're going to talk about in the early days of a campaign, they're going to have to include issues that Black people are concerned about. They're going to have to build relationships within Black communities. Because the first times they go on television or the first time they have a debate, it's going to be in front of Black people. The first time you have to cast ballots, it's going to be in front of Black people. So I think this is going to affect everyone's agenda. You're not going to be you're not going to be an Amy Klobuchar. You're not, like, no disrespect to her, but she was not someone who was prepared for Black audiences or Black issues. She sat there and talked about building a coalition with moderate Republicans. And yeah, that plays okay in Iowa, but not for the Democratic base. And you're not going to get people fired up. And that's when you get 37,000 fewer Black folks voting, in an election, which could cost you a state or two or five. So if anything, this is going to force them to do the right thing. It's good for the party. It's not just good for certain individuals and certain people. Of course, it's going to be good for Joe Biden, someone like Joe Biden, who has built up those relationships over time and, of course, worked for Barack Obama and has that kind of cachet with him and has known Jim Clyburn for decades. That'll help that type of person. But it'll also force anybody with any kind of presidential aspirations from the Democratic Party to say, yeah, I need some black folks. And not only that, because this is my complaint, even about the current White House, get some new black voices in your ear. Get some black strategists who are going to tell you this is what black folks are talking about in the barbershop. Right. This is what black folks are talking about at the beauty salon. Right. This is what they whisper about at the bus stop. These are the people that you need, not just the same old people who've been doing it for a long time, and you bring your one black consultant in. I remember I spoke, and I have no problem saying this, I spoke to the Buttigieg campaign early on, and I was like, this is early, but they were like, yeah, I was like, how many black people do you have on your campaign? And they were like, well, our goal is to have 50% of our campaign be made up of people of color. And I was like, okay, that's great. That's a great goal. How many black people do you have on your campaign? And at the time, it was 0.
Damn.
You know what I mean? And you want to be, the Democratic nominee? You're going to go into South Carolina with no black people? Or you just wanted to get in and then you wanted to, you go on the Breakfast Club and think it's okay because you know what I mean? Like that's not going to work for black folks. Like, I think one of the things that annoys me about both parties is that they think so little of black folks.
Come on, bro.
Of course, Republicans think even less by putting up people like Herschel Walker and saying, hey, look, he's black. You know what I mean? As if we don't pay attention to what people say and what they stand for. If there's one thing black people care about, is what you stand for. And I think now this is going to force people to actually have to make good relationships, to get the right advisors in their rooms, and to craft their agenda around black folks and around the concerns and issues that black folks are thinking about and talking about.
And here's the other thing, as we kind of get to the wrap up of the conversation, here's the other thing, that what went well for the 2020 campaign is going to be different for 2024, right?
Yes, indeed.
So now you're going to have to contend with, and I'm saying this president, and just in thinking about what you just said in terms of how this president may approach. You might go to a Jim Clyburn and say, okay, hey, you got my help. But then Jim Clyburn might be saying, hey, look, man, since George Floyd, we got more young black people, more advocates of Black Lives Matter. We got more black folks, more sharper. They want real policy. They don't want the promise of improvement. They want real policy.
Right.
Look, we might have to. And so that process is going to actually have to start this year.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? Like we only got until next year to get into the presidential election. And look, let me just say this. Look, we don't know who the Republican nominee is. If Biden is the Democratic nominee, we don't know the Republican, even though Trump threw his hat in the ring. We still don't know. But the point is, this presidential election cannot be get along presidential election. For a lot of people in this country, there's too much at stake. And I doubt it's going to be Trump for the GOP. I think it's going to be more towards DeSantis. And then what do you do with a man who's already fighting against talking about the history of black people? How do you handle that? So you can't handle that the same year, all in one year. That has to be groundwork. That has to be relationship building. That has to be organizing now, just get started now to prepare, because, man, you don't know. I mean, he might say a whole bunch of racist things. He might say some old biased things. And we be thinking, oh, that's going to take him out. Oh, that's going to take him out. And that empowers him. That's going to raise him more money. That's going to get more people to follow him. That empowers him. He gets he won't have to beg Fox. Fox is just going to be there for him. He ain't going to have to beg for that type of coverage. He's going to get the platform. So we got to figure out, well, what's going to be our strategy in dealing with a man who's been governor, who has a high approval rating in the state of Florida and in some other states, who's leading the charge against the cultural side on this cultural war. How do you handle a man like him?
Right. And, I'll just say, I'm not convinced it'll be DeSantis. I don't think DeSantis has a personality like Trump. I think Trump has a stronger personality, and when they get up, stay on stage, and they're juxtaposed to one another, it's going to be tough for DeSantis.
I think the only reason I say DeSantis is just simply because he's been in elected office. He knows how the game goes.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it could very well be DeSantis. I think DeSantis is going to be tougher to beat than Trump, to be honest. I'm hoping it's Trump. I think Trump is going to be easier to beat than DeSantis. I will tell you, I think Black people, again, and, Jim Clyburn is great, but he's civil rights generation.
Right.
You need somebody, you need to get some younger voices in the room. You need to get, some of these. If we were to have a primary, I think it's going to be Joe Biden, but Joe Biden needs to come on the Black Star Network every now and again. Like, it can't just be, all right, I'm going to go on the Breakfast Club. You know what I mean? Which, no disrespect to the Breakfast Club. I like the Breakfast Club. You know what I'm saying? But go and reach out to lots of Black media. You know what I'm saying? Go, of course, it'd be nice if they came on The Culture. It'd be nice if they came on my podcast with the Working Class Elites. But we need them to actually speak to us, speak to our issues, and they will have a much easier time in the states that they need to win. The states they need to win, like Georgia. You need every single Black vote to win Georgia. You will not win Georgia if you don't get massive Black turnout. You need massive Black turnout in Detroit in order to win Michigan. You need massive Black turnout in Philadelphia if you want to win the state of Pennsylvania. And if you even want to compete in Ohio, you better get massive turnout in Cleveland and Cincinnati and Akron and all those Black areas. It's going to be really critically important. And so undervaluing Black votes would be a death sentence. And also not listening to younger Black voters and allowing for young voters in general, but young Black voters to fall by the wayside would be a huge mistake.
And here's very quickly as we wrap up this part of the conversation, Doc, you're going to have to put Kamala, she's going to have to rebrand herself. You got to rebrand the vice president over these next few months, over the next year and a half or so, before she can get it. Because as much as people, she's not as strong as a candidate that I think a lot of Black people want to see. And I get all the symbolism. I get the historic nature. And I'm not saying she's a terrible human being. I'm just saying as a political candidate, she's not that strong.
She's not. And she's
not that strong. Like I said, a DeSantis, we don't know who DeSantis or Trump. Man, look, that white male privilege will come in so quick. I'm saying, and they will all, and they look, man, this is a very different situation. In just a matter of 4 years, you have to rethink your strategy on how to approach Black America. Because over the past 4 years, we've changed, we've evolved, and we've gotten much more conscious. We're not going for the okey doke anymore. So I think at this point, you can't, like you said, you can't rely on the civil. If they come from the civil rights generation, they better have the spirit of fire, because you can't go along to get along. We can't wait no more. I'm like Dr. King. You know what I'm saying? Like, we just can't wait no more for something to happen. Dr. Jason Nichols, my brother, it's always a pleasure to connect with you, man, on Mondays. I look forward to the conversation so often. So thank you so much for giving us your insight and analysis. And real quick, Doc, how can folks keep up with the work you're doing?
So first of all, you can follow me on Twitter at Dr. Jason Nichols. That's at DrJasonNichols. You also can check out my new podcast, available anywhere podcasts are found. It's called The Working Class Elites. We interviewed some city officials from Memphis recently about what's going on in Memphis. We've interviewed a police chief in Maryland about what's going on with policing. We've done some really, really great interviews. It'd be worth a listen. So go, and check out The Working Class Elites.
Yeah,
and definitely follow me on Twitter. Find me on Facebook. Find me everywhere. And let's grow.
There it is right there. Dr. Jason Nichols. There it is. Working Class Elites, the episode 1, race and post-pandemic policing, and so much more. You can definitely check out Dr. Jason Nichols every Monday here on The Culture, as well as Roland Martin Unfiltered. Doc, thank you so much, brother. Appreciate you. God willing, we'll reconnect next week.
Thank you, my brother. You already know my brother.
Absolutely. All right, folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, we're going to have our next brother Michael and Hotep, join us in the conversation as we talk about Aramark, the global food vendor, and how their serving of a culturally insensitive meal has gotten people calling racism. I'm going to break down the details of that story next. So stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol,
we're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear. Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Folks, welcome back to The Culture. I wanted to talk about a story that has gotten some attention. This story is out of the state of New York, talking about the global food vendor Aramark and how they are now embroiled in a controversy around cultural sensitivity. Here's the story, folks. Aramark has apologized after they served middle school students in New York State chicken and waffles with a watermelon dessert on the first day of Black History Month. Chicken and waffles. All right, let me share with you what the Griot reported about this. Take a look at this here, folks. Aramark, this global food vendor, they apologize. And as a global food vendor and a food vendor that serves schools and other institutions around the world, they issued a statement on Thursday of last week acknowledging the mistake in a letter to parents. Now, they said, according to the statement, while our menu was not intended as a cultural meal, we acknowledge that the timing was inappropriate and our team should have been more thoughtful in its service. This was a mistake and does not represent the values of our company, and we are committed to doing better in the future. Now, according to the principal at Nyack Middle School, David Johnson, Mr. Johnson, which is about 30 miles north of Manhattan, Mr. Johnson said in the letter that Aramark changed the scheduled menu without running it by school administrators, as reported by Loha. He said, quote, "We are extremely disappointed by this regrettable situation and apologize to the entire NIAC community for the cultural insensitivity displayed by our food service provider." He said, "I am disappointed that Aramark will serve items that differed from the published monthly menu, especially items that reinforce negative stereotypes concerning the African American community." Interesting. They serve chicken, waffles, and watermelon the first day of Black History. All right, folks, let me just ask you this question. First and foremost, do you think Aramark was wrong? Let me ask that. Do you think Aramark was wrong? And then the second question I have for you is chicken, waffles, and watermelon, is this still offensive to Black people? Should we be offended? Now, I've migrated to Los Angeles, folks, and I have to say, like in Baltimore, we didn't have a lot of chicken and waffle spots. Here in Los Angeles and California, you know, Roscoe's, and you got a lot of other chicken and waffle places. You can find chicken and waffle places in Inglewood and Beverly Hills. So I'm not sure if this is considered to be culturally insensitive. I'm not sure. That's why I'm so happy to have my brother joining me in this conversation. And of course, I want to hear from you folks, my online culture crew. But we're going to be joined now by my brother Michael Imhotep, who serves as the host of the African History Network podcast. And you can find the work that he's doing on AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. And you can definitely check out him on RMU Roland Martin Unfiltered. Brother Michael, good to talk to you once again, sir. Good afternoon.
Hey, Farajii, and happy Black History Month as well.
Happy Black History Month as well, brother. All right, Brother Michael, you've done, now part of people don't know, I mean some, but not everybody may not know. You're a historian, you're a researcher, but you also worked in business. You worked in marketing.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
My degree's in business administration, yes.
Your
Taught entrepreneurship for 7 years, managed business consulting companies, yes.
All those things, right? Big companies, small companies, Black owned, all that good stuff.
Yes.
All right, so is Aramark wrong? Is this a case of Aramark just being culturally insensitive, or is there something else that we're not seeing here?
Well, it's culturally insensitive to do that, especially on the first day of Black History Month, or African American History Month, as the name has been changed to by ASALH, Association for the Study of African American Life and History. Now, it's we have to determine whether this was an accident or intentional. Now, if we look at the article from the Washington Post, schools vendor served chicken, watermelon at start of Black History Month from February 6, 2023, it says that the New York Middle School on February 1st was scheduled to be served cheesesteaks, broccoli, and fruit for lunch. Cheesesteaks, broccoli, and fruit. But somehow it changed, the menu changed to chicken, waffles, and watermelon. Okay. Now, one of the questions I would ask as a vegetarian, okay, where are the vegetables? Number one, you serving this for lunch. Where are the vegetables? Number one. Okay. Number two, who was it who made this change? Okay. Now, Aramark has apologized for this, but who has made this change? Now, it also, we look and see back in February 2018, Aramark made a similar mistake. They served a meal at New York University in honor of Black History Month that included barbecue ribs, cornbread, collard greens, and Kool-Aid, and watermelon flavored water. Okay, so here we have watermelon again. Now, if I want water, I don't want watermelon flavored water. I want water. I want H2O. Okay, so how they get watermelon flavored water? Now, Aramark is based in Philadelphia. I don't know if it was the same employees in 2018 who did that did it February 1st, 2023. I don't know, but it's the same company. Okay, it's two different states, but still. Oh, I'm sorry. It's in the same state. It's in the state of New York. It's in the same state. I don't know if it's the same employees, but still you see this thing with watermelon. So where is this coming from? Now, there's nothing wrong with eating watermelon. Watermelon dates back to ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt, 5,000 years ago. Okay, there's nothing wrong with eating watermelon, but there has been a racist trope which has attached African Americans to watermelon, even though basically all races of people in the United States eat watermelon. Okay. And what happened was after emancipation, after slavery ends, chattel slavery ends in 1865, after the Civil War and 13th Amendment, ratified December 6, 1865, watermelon was a crop that we grew, that African Americans grew, that was associated with our self-sufficiency. And then as a backlash to that, white Southerners are then going to project it as a racist trope. Okay. So the racist trope has dominated in the media, in culture, things like this, minstrel shows, etc. And a lot of us don't understand this history behind it. And then in 2011, when students at the University of California at Irvine were served chicken and waffles on Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day in 2011,
by Aramark.
By Aramark. Aramark said his managers and chefs will complete cultural sensitivity training, and that was reported by the Los Angeles Times. So I keep seeing chicken and waffles. I keep seeing this pop up. So I don't know if it was intentional, February 1st, 2023, but we do see a pattern here.
All right. So, Brother Michael, you pulled off the receipts. You laid out the pattern. What's your assessment? What's your final judgment? You think this is all intentional?
February 1st, 2023. I don't know if it's intentional, but I'm still trying to find out who made the decision to change the menu. So so hypothetically,
right.
it could have been some employees who did it intentionally, and the higher ups at Aramark didn't know it. Okay,
right. Which is possible. Let's just say this, because like any company, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have different levels of management, and then of course you got the CEO. So the CEO is not going to be in on every single decision,
right?
Especially if the CEO is saying, "Okay, this is one of our clients. What's the menu? The printed menu says cheesesteak. Okay, fine. That's just, you're not thinking about it." And I'm just saying that from a business perspective, you're not thinking about, oh, okay, let me see what they're serving Black people on February the 1st. Now, okay, fine. If they didn't serve that since they served that, a couple of things. If they would have served the cheesesteak and say on the 3rd or the 4th day of the month, they served chicken and waffles, would it have been such an issue?
Well, I still have a problem with chicken and waffles for lunch in the first place, feeding at
okay, but that's because
I still have a problem with feeding children chicken and waffles, and then you put sugary syrup on top of it and then send them back to class. I have a problem with that.
Hey, look, you see, look, you're stating your grievance to the wrong person, because I'm a breakfast guy. I will eat breakfast all day. You know what I'm saying? So,
yeah. I'm also a vegetarian. So,
right, I trust.
So they serve chicken. So let's say this. They serve chicken at school anytime. There's no problem. They serve chicken.
Right.
I guess schools that serve breakfast may have pancakes or waffles.
Absolutely.
But to serve chicken and waffles for lunch
that's
during Black History and watermelon, the whole combination. Okay, because chicken is a stereotype associated with African Americans as well. Now,
and guess what? We're not the only ones that love chicken.
No, we're not the only ones that love chicken, but we're the ones who perfected cooking chicken and seasoning chicken, and that is a byproduct of slavery. And a lot of the food that is associated with Southern comfort food or Southern food, a lot of that is food that African Americans perfected, or African Americans enhance the flavor of it in the way that we season the food. And oftentimes we're seasoning the food in ways that reminded us of home, that reminded us of Africa. Okay, because we were the ones largely cooking the food for the slave masters and the families and things like this, right? So he goes deep back into that history. So we still haven't, in researching the story, we still haven't seen why the change was made. Why the change in the menu was made. Okay, I still haven't come across that.
Right. So that opens up the conversation. Like we're still trying to figure out who should be held accountable for this. But I'm going back to even this like you said, this cultural trope that we have been kind of stigmatized with, that Black folks only love chicken and watermelon. Can we break away from that? Can is this something like, is this still offensive right now? Because look, I love watermelon. I absolutely love watermelon. So
has very little nutritional value, but yeah, watermelon is good, especially on a hot day.
Right.
It's
but
like
let me tell you,
96, 95%, 94% water. Yes.
Right. But my point is like, should we still be offended by that?
If it's used in a way to dehumanize and demean African Americans, absolutely. But this deals with understanding history, number one, and having control of the media outlets, number two, to be able to fight back. Okay. And to be able to put that information out, to be able to hold people accountable and be able to fight back and educate people on what's taking place, educate people on the history of why watermelon was demeaned. When we used it as a tool of self-sufficiency, and this is something coming from Africa as well. Okay. Just like black-eyed peas, those were cowpeas. Cowpeas come from West Africa. All right. So there's when we get into the history of African Americans eating black-eyed peas on New Year's Day, yes, that dates back to after slavery, when food was scarce, like after the Civil War and things like this. But it was looked at as being fortunate to be able to have a meal. OK, but also cowpeas come from West Africa as well. This article that I just put here in the chat, people could check this out, how the watermelon stereotype came to be weaponized against Black Americans, November 13th, 2022, by businessinsider.com. And it goes through some of this history, and it talks about I think it's in here. Yeah, the origins of watermelon can be dated back approximately 6,000 years ago, when it was domesticated through Sudan, Egypt, Ethiopia, Libya, and Kenya. Enjoyed by royalty like the Egyptian Nesubiti or Pharaoh or King Tutankhamun, watermelon soon made it to Rome and Greece, later becoming cultivated in Spain after the Arab conquest. You mean after the Moorish conquest, after the Moors invade Spain in 711 AD, led by General Tariq ibn Ziyad. So we see even a history here where watermelon dates back thousands of years in African history, but then also African Americans, after slavery ends, use it as a form of self-sufficiency, because it was a crop that we sold to give ourselves some type of economic stability. So we have to understand this history, understand how to fight back against these racist tropes.
Look, we got to take a quick pause. We're going to continue the conversation, because Online Culture Crew, I need to hear from y'all. Y'all talking about chicken. And look, a lot of Black folks love chicken. And guess what? In whether it's LA, Baltimore, guess who's at Popeyes? It ain't just Black people. It's Latinos and it's Asians and it's even white people. Let me just tell you, and I wanted to have this conversation because, do you think, folks, that Aramark has done something wrong? Do you think that that because of their pattern of serving chicken and waffles during Black celebrations, Black time of year, that it's just another racist situation? We're going to continue the conversation with Brother Michael N. Hotep, and certainly with you. So stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Folks, welcome back to the show. We have been talking about the global food vendor Aramark and how they are in hot water after some have called their recent menu at the start of Black History Month culturally insensitive. This was the case when Aramark served for the first day of Black History Month a middle school, chicken waffles with a side of watermelon. Now, they apologize for their unintentional insensitivity after serving these chicken and waffles on the first day of Black History Month. But it has caused us to have a conversation about racist tropes, has caused us to have a conversation about food, and of course, white supremacy and racism. We've been having this discussion with my brother Michael and Hotep, host of the African History Network podcast show. And he's also the founder of the AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. And of course, folks, I want to hear from you, my online culture crew. What do you think about this Aramark situation? Now, Brother Michael laid out there were many instances over these past few years where Aramark has used chicken and waffles as a meal, a dish for the celebration of Black life, Black culture in this country. Is it by design? Or was it unintentional? Now, the other thing about this story, this latest story, is that the school, Nyack Middle School, said that they did not get any type of heads up. They weren't even notified that there was a change on the menu. And when you go back to what the children were supposed to be served on the first day of Black History, it was cheesesteaks. It was cheesesteaks. And Brother Michael is not happy about the fact that it was only like those type of foods with no vegetables.
It was cheesesteaks and broccoli.
Okay.
So they were gonna have a green vegetable in there.
They're gonna have some greenery somewhere. I want to go back to my online culture crew. Folks, join us. Throw your comments in the chat as we're streaming live on YouTube, Facebook, and of course on BlackStarNetwork.com. Sandy, you said I think it was a misstep. Okay, I hear you. Here's the thing, Brother Michael. How is it that these companies as big and as Aramark, a company that has had this issue in the past, how are they still making a misstep, as Sandy calls it? How do they still make a misstep of this magnitude?
Well, I don't know how many employees that Aramark has. I know they are a huge corporation.
They have, and this is, we do know they have contracts with both the school system and prisons.
Yeah, they provide foods for prisons as well. And in a statement from Aramark, they said that they serve millions of meals every day, and our team does an excellent job meeting the needs of the communities we serve. But in this case, we made an inexcusable mistake, and we apologize. So, I still am waiting to find out why was the change made, who made the change, and why was the change made. And Aramark needs to be pressed on this. The NAACP needs to jump in on this. National Urban League. That we need to find out.
Press them on.
Say that again.
What would be the pressure? What would NAACP press them on?
One, we would call them out on possibly being culturally insensitive, number one. Okay. Number two, the other thing is like when we look at in 2018, the at New York University, okay, February 2018, when Aramark served for Black History and out of Black History Month, they served ribs, cornbread, collard greens, Kool-Aid, and watermelon flavored water. Well, the next year, New York University ended its contract with Aramark, according to the student newspaper, to provide that university with food. Okay, so we can leverage our economics to enforce an agenda as well. The schools, universities, they could reassess their vending contracts to provide food that Aramark has. And a lot of times when instances like this happen, it's like when you had the is the company that licenses Sesame Street, and they had the instances of possible ignoring African-American children. And then other parents started coming out saying, hey, the same thing happened to my child. We may see some other stories about other schools where the same thing has happened dealing with Aramark. Okay. So so we have leverage. We have leverage here. We have to understand how to use the leverage that we have.
That's true. That is very true. Karen, my sister, you check it in. Karen Connor, you said no company should decide which food should be served without asking by way of a vote by the parents and students. Soul food is delicious. However, Caribbean, African, and others eat different foods. Right. So let me ask you, and this is also the part of the cultural part of the discussion. And Karen, I appreciate you for bringing that point up, because if this was, I don't know, a day to celebrate Latin and Mexican culture, and they serve tacos or some sort of Mexican dish, would that be deemed offensive?
Yeah, you may have some in the Latino community, because that's a stereotype, eating tacos, okay, which is a Mexican food, and all Latinos don't eat the same type of food because they come from different parts of the world. Right. They speak Spanish usually as a first language, but all Latinos are not saying you're saying this, but all Latinos are not Mexicans, okay?
Right.
You have Cubans, El Salvadorians, Venezuelans, things like that. All Latinos are not Mexicans. Okay, so if you're celebrating and Latino heritage, and you serve tacos, that could be looked at as being stereotypical. So you're trying to stereotype all Latinos and say this is what they eat. Okay, so
but see, that's the thing though, and see, that's the thing. That's why I'm happy to have this conversation with you, Brother Michael, because it almost gets to the point where we're expecting non-living institutions, i.e., for-profit companies. We kind of want them to be human in their interaction with us, where they're just simply tools for capitalism. They are just profit-making entities, right? And we're like, no, but in order for you to get my money, in order for me to become your customer, you need to be more culturally sensitive to what my needs are. But I'm wondering, even in that effort, is it even realistic to have a company that gets it right with there's so many different people that are in this country, let alone in some of these cities and states, that you're not going to get it right. Now, am I giving Airmark a hook, getting them off the hook? No, but I think that it requires us to have some conversation about what is that thing we're going to fight on, and what's the thing we can be like, all right, let's just let this go. You know what I mean? Because there are so many bigger things, right, culturally, that we need to still deal with. And if you get caught up in saying, I'm black, I don't want no chicken, I don't want no Kool-Aid, when everybody in my network, black folks, say, yeah, I love chicken, I eat it all the time, I love watermelon. You know what I'm saying? It's like,
right.
I
don't eat chicken. I'm a vegetarian. I don't eat chicken. But so here's the thing. In business, there's something called corporate responsibility.
Okay, right.
And corporations do have a duty, and this deals with if you go to business school, you take classes like social ethics, or you may take some type of class that deals with corporate responsibility. They do have a responsibility to service and respect the communities that they're in and profit from also. And there's been more of an effort over probably like the past 20 or 30 years to really understand corporate responsibility and understand a relationship with the consumer, as opposed to just selling something to the consumer and reaping the profit from it. You have to also have some respect for the people who you make money from, and people who understand their history, culture, much better than others will hold corporations to a higher standard. They will hold corporations more responsible. Now, one of the problems with African Americans, because we've been largely stripped of our history and culture, language, spiritual systems, mores, folklore, family ties, nationality, etc., and we've largely been taught to see reality through the eyes of Europeans, and largely taught to hate ourselves. The reason why many of our people don't fight back is because many of our people don't think they're worth fighting for. The reason why many of our people don't fight back, especially against white supremacy and racism of any significance, I'm not talking about marching. Okay, but really any significance, leveraging our economics to enforce our political agenda and redistribute the pain, as Dr. King said April 3rd, 1968 in his last speech, I've been to the mountaintop. And we understand our economic power. If you don't think you are worth having anything better, if you don't think you're worth being treated better, if you listen to music on a daily basis that dehumanizes you, calls you an N-word, a B, an H, a thought, and things like this, you're going to be less reluctant to demand respect from other people.
Yeah.
Okay. Unless it's a march that happens behind somebody being killed by police, things like that. And that is important. But at the same time, we can't keep calling ourselves N-words and participate in behavior that dehumanizes us on a daily basis and then ask people to respect us.
No,
okay?
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
we got to have respect for ourselves first. And people who have respect for themselves, people understand their history, they fight back when you have incidences like this.
So in Real Brooklyn, my guy, you brought up a point, and I had to just do a quick search. You said in response to Conscious Thought, you said a white dude owns Popeyes. What's your point? A white man by the name of Alvin Charles Copeland is the founder. He's a white male who's the founder of Popeyes. Now, Popeyes is branded as a Southern black company.
Well, yeah, because you're dealing with chicken, and they would have a black woman as a spokesperson. Louisiana Popeyes, things like this, and then Kentucky Fried Chicken had a white man as a spokesperson, Colonel Sanders, decades ago.
I mean, at least he was real about who brought the chicken.
Right, but we have to understand it was African Americans who perfected making chicken and seasoning chicken. Yep.
Here's the thing, and this is something that you just mentioned. You're right. Black folks, we perfected the recipe of fried chicken, but white people capitalize off of that perfection.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
White people understand the power of branding and marketing, and so to the untrained eye, you would look at Popeyes and be like, "That's a black-owned company."
Okay, I wouldn't, but okay.
No, I'm saying to the no, come on, brother Michael, you
right, but okay, right. I wouldn't think it's a black-owned company, but yeah.
To the untrained eye, you would think either the black woman is the owner or the black woman is a spokesperson for a black company, not understanding that these companies, and I think this is why I say this is the cultural part about it. We want to humanize companies that are set up to just make money. We're trying to humanize them to appeal to our own humanity. And I'm trying to figure out to myself if that isn't even realistic. Is that something that we need to get out of the behavior of?
We can hold corporations accountable, especially corporations that we spend hundreds of millions or billions of dollars with, and and you have to do that. We have to renegotiate our relationship with corporate America. To understand that it has to be, and this is something one of my teachers, Dr. Claude Anderson, has been talking about for years, and a lot of our people don't understand. So whether it's a two-way relationship as opposed to just a one-way relationship where we're just spending money with them, okay? What percentage of the contracts do African American owned advertising agencies have with Popeyes? Because we spend so much money with them. What percentage of their deposits do they put in black-owned banks? What percentage of the contracts do African American owned businesses have with Popeyes, whether it's for delivery, whether it's suppliers, different things like this? People who understand business operate at a different level and go after the money. Okay, we spend this money with you on a yearly basis, and I've managed companies where we had contracts with charter schools for janitorial services. We've had city contracts, things like this. So people who understand business operate at a different level and focus on a return on their investment, and deal with renegotiating their relationship with corporate America, and understand our banks, our advertising agencies, our different businesses, catering services, limousine services. Those are all businesses, and they need contracts. They need business to thrive and expand. Okay,
and look, to your point, because we got to take a quick pause, but to your point, Brother Michael, that's the other part. While they are talking about, and I'm talking about folks that that founded these restaurants and these companies, they're going after the money. Yeah. We have been conditioned to look at how they make us feel, how, you know, the culture. So we're focused. We've been conditioned to focus on that part of their business plan. Okay,
what we see in the commercials, things like that. Yeah,
right.
We haven't been taught to focus on the money,
on the cultural side of it. We're not seeing. We're not. And I'm not saying all of us, but some of us are not looking at that. At the end of the day, the reason that they make us feel this way because the bottom line is to get our money.
Well, not only that, we have to reorientate ourselves when it comes to money, because if we are preaching socialism, you ain't going to understand capitalism. You're not going to understand how to take advantage of those opportunities and leverage the dollars that you make to take advantage of those opportunities.
And just to add to this as we wrap up, if we go to all of the companies, if we go down a list, we make a list of all of the companies that we buy our goods and services from, and we find that there's a white man, a white woman, white family behind it, we're not in a space, and unfortunately, we're not in the space just yet in this country to go totally black, right? There's no totally black alternative to Aramark, right? To because I think that's the part of us, and this is why black folks are in, you know, I think for a lot of us, we're in a kind of a schizophrenic space because we're trying to settle the cultural side of us, but then at the same time, we know that we gotta spend money. We got to make sure that we get our goods and services. And so we go through this kind of conflict within ourselves. And so it's like you look at an Aramark, you're like, okay, y'all were wrong. They send out an apology letter, but you can't get around Aramark because they're such of a major company.
Well, we have to
unless you start packing your children every day.
Well, see, this is why we have to understand history and understand economics, to understand that we have to renegotiate our relationship with corporate America, to understand we have the power to be able to think on that level, to demand something more than what we have. And most people don't focus on, wait a second, how much money do these corporations spend on an annual basis on contracts? And then what percentage of those contracts do African Americans get? This is something that Roland keeps talking about when it comes to advertising. This is what a lot of people don't understand when it comes to black-owned media. We're only getting a drop in the bucket when it comes to advertising dollars coming from these white corporations that we spend billions of dollars with on an annual basis. Other people don't tolerate stuff like that.
Absolutely. As we close, DeAndre, I think you said it best, and you just mentioned, Brother Roland. DeAndre, you said, like Roland likes to say, Farajii, we put the show in show business. This applies to that as well. We like the show. They love the business. All right, folks, we got to take another quick pause. Right. We got to take another quick pause. When we come forward, we're going to check in with my sister, Kim Poole, who's talking about how she's giving back to the next generation as the nonprofit organization she's working for is looking to host freedom rides for young people. Stay with us. That conversation is up next here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, We have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol,
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
Folks, welcome back to the show. For our final conversation, I wanted to talk to a sister who is doing her part to making sure that the next generation stays connected to the great work, history, and legacy and struggle of the past generation. I'm going to be checking in with Sister Kim Poole, who is an activist, a soul fusion singer, and she's doing a phenomenal job as she's doing her part with the Teaching Artists Initiative, the Teaching Artists Institute, that was founded in 2015, where they're using art as a tool for community development. And this year, they are hosting a special project or a special trip where they're asking for young people to be a part of their tour for the Freedom Rides. And so I want to bring my sister in, Kim Poole. She's a teaching artist, soul fusion singer. Kim, thank you so much. It's good to see you after all of these years. How are you today?
I'm good, Farajii. When Haki first told me that he reached out to you and asked if I could have this opportunity, I said, Farajii Muhammad from the New Light Leadership Coalition on York Road. Listen, he took me back to high school, like real Baltimore. The poetry slam.
I want to let my culture crew know a little bit about the relationship that I have with Kim. Full transparency, y'all. She was in high school when I met this sister, and we were doing leadership training. I was the guy that trained her and so many other young people in Baltimore. Look at this full circle. She's doing the great work of teaching and training other young people using art and exposing them to our history and our struggle. And I'm old as crap.
Listen, you're getting better. You are getting better. The melanin doesn't allow you to just, deteriorate. It's that preservation element. So you'll be just fine, love. Don't you worry.
I'm telling you, it is so good to see you. First and foremost, let's talk about the Teaching Artists Institute that was founded in 2015, how you guys are using art for community development to talk about history and especially to connect this current generation to the past generation. Give us some details about this effort.
Absolutely. So we are engaged in what we call art for social transformation. So what does that mean? Art is everything. In the Teaching Artists Institute, art is not just I sing, but it's not just about music. It's not just about poetry or the traditional mediums. Art is about innovation, creativity, and design thinking, teaching every sector in society how to think with the creativity of the artist class. And so with the Teaching Artists Institute, we're vested in reminding the world from the African worldview that everything is art and everybody all the time. And so this building that I'm sitting in, my home, it is an example of art. And so it also defines the reality of the society, the art forms that we create. And so realigning our cultural trajectory is also a major part of our work in the Teaching Artists Institute. And this is how we engage the general population in our work through our tours. We are engaged in taking history off the page, making it relevant, facilitating intergenerational dialogue. I appreciate it. Like Farajii mentioned, when I met him, I was in high school, he was in college. You know, we were doing that work, but we don't see those intergenerational relationships. I want this year, especially, for us to have the elder class to, before they leave this realm, to tell their stories for themselves to the young people that are starting to believe that it never existed. I think that this is a unique time in our history, and using art as that common denominator, as that universal language to help facilitate this dialogue and communication is a part of what the Teaching Artists Institute does. And we do that in 8 countries around the world. So 6 of our countries are located on the continent of Africa. On the West Coast, we're in Ghana, Gambia, Liberia. On the East Coast, we're in Tanzania, we're in Uganda and Kenya. But you know, there's no place like home. I'll never stop doing this work on the home front. Nas, an incredible artist, he said, you can't help other places when you ain't helped home yet. And Baltimore will always be, I'll always be indebted to the leadership and elders of Baltimore. And I'll always come as a servant leader, ready to make sure that the generation behind me receives some of the mentorship and guidance that I did, and that I'm willing to compete with TikTok, and I'm willing to compete with video games. Because let's face it, some of these classes and these classrooms and these schools, they are irrelevant. They're culturally irrelevant. They're incompetent. They aren't prepared to engage our young people. And so I specialize in using my art to make engaging opportunities for our young people, make it incentivized so that they see the value in our culture and enjoy their time with us, learning about the history of their people.
This is fascinating, and this is so necessary, Kim. 6 continents, you're doing work all over the world and making sure that, you know, even for Black folks and Black children in Baltimore are still getting the full experience and benefit of this. Talk to us a little bit about what can these students, when you say these freedom rides, we know that historically, and this is coming from the civil rights movement, that freedom ride encompassed a lot of different areas. So what areas does this freedom ride project cover?
Well, you know that May 4th, 1961, CORE, they took the first freedom ride out of Washington, D.C. And so our freedom ride, in the same vein, starts in Washington, D.C., even though we will be picking up young people in Baltimore. We've partnered with the Y of Central Maryland to sponsor at least 30 of them for this year on the bus. But we will also start in Washington, D.C. at the MLK Monument. Of course, we'll walk across the mall, talk about the March on Washington. They're having their anniversary this year. And then we'll head to our own museum, the Smithsonian. From there, we go into Farmville, Virginia. We're talking about Barbara Johns. She was one of the cases that were used to support or to take the Brown versus Board of Education case to the Supreme Court. It was just a young girl, 16 years old, tired of dilapidated conditions in her high school. She had an opportunity for exposure, saw how nicely other high schools, you know, their facilities and their instruction and their materials. And she came back to her own high school and said, listen, we need to do something about the conditions that they're giving us. And they walked out. That empowers our young people to let them know, listen, you're not the future, you're the now. It's time for you to do something about your conditions, work in partnership with us. Tell us what you need in order to facilitate the change that we need. We hate to put this responsibility on your shoulders, but we're using history to show you that this is what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to use the entitlement that you have. You're supposed to use, you know, the youthfulness, that energy to change your environment. That's your responsibility, not just later, but now. Let us know how we can assist you in that. So from Virginia, we go down into Greensboro, North Carolina, and we talk about the sit-in movement with those 4 gentlemen that, you know, sit in at Woolworth and said that, listen, I'm going to eat at this lunch counter today. And they did that. And they also put a lot of energy and fire. So we bring in the college, the HBCU discussion. From there, we go into the Mecca. down into Atlanta, Georgia. But while in Atlanta, Georgia, we talk about the international influence that the civil rights movement had. A lot of people tell us that the civil rights movement was history, it's back then, and most importantly, it's just our story, Black people here in this country. But our story influenced the world. And we need young people to know that they do have a culture, that, you know, they tell us you don't have a flag, you don't have a language, you people don't have a culture. But as I travel around the world, I see hip hop. You know, in Africa, they're wearing Timberland boots. And I wonder, it's 90 degrees outside for Farajii, and they are wearing Timberland boots. And
that's just like America then. That's just like America.
Yes. Why? Yes. My brothers and sisters, why? Why? And it's because our culture is influencing the world through our music and our food taste. And, you know, I listened to Mike Imhotep before me, and, you know, I love watermelon. I got to tell you, I don't know if Aaron Mark was wrong. That's not my conversation today. But I will say that our culture has influenced the world. And so while we're in Atlanta on the Freedom Rides tour, we talk about that. We talk about Kwame Nkrumah, how he went to school in Philadelphia during the civil rights movement. And then he decided after that experience, he would go back to Ghana and use that empowerment to emancipate Ghana, the first country in Africa free from colonial rule. We look at Fela Kuti, another artist after my own heart. And he heard that rhythm from James Brown. I'm Black and I'm proud. He listened to the music from us and our own description of our experience. And he empowered himself and then went back to Nigeria and said, listen, we're going to use music, Zombie, oh, Zombie, to emancipate Nigeria from a police state. I mean, Mariam Makeba, she married, you know, Stokely Carmichael from SNCC. And so we in Atlanta, we illuminate some of these relationships and the influence that we had, not just in Africa, but in China, in Tiananmen Square, when they protested and rest in peace, lost their lives. We look at how they brought down the Great Wall, you know, the Berlin Wall. So the civil rights movement has had an international influence. And so it's important that we understand that's our culture, that's ours. Holding America accountable to its projected ideals has in turn influenced the world to take a step up, right? To be a representative of the standard they say that they believe in. And so really, human rights and civil rights all in one.
Hey, really quickly, we got a couple of moments left, but Kim, this tour sounds absolutely amazing, super necessary, and not even just for young people. Hell, it might be necessary to do a freedom ride for adults as well, because so many of us, we don't know that history, not because we don't want to know, but because we just haven't been exposed to the opportunities such as this to learn that history. And my brother, Willie Frazier, one of my online culture crew members, he said, great job, Queen Kim. Question, what are your feelings on the attack of teaching Black history? Also, how are you combating this if you're running into conflict? So we got about 30 seconds. But what do you make of this attack on our history, whether it's coming from Florida, Alabama, or some other state, or from political leadership that says, you know what, there's certain elements of Black history that we don't need to teach?
So first, I want to say, Farajii, we're facilitating intergenerational dialogue. In the African worldview, the classroom was always intergenerational. So it's definitely for adults. We're educating youth, but we're also educating families. We want you to go on this experience with your family. Bring your grandmother. And, you know, you learning about Harriet Tubman, or you're learning about James Farmer, or somebody on the Freedom Rides Trail. But what is your great grandmother's name? What is your own history? So we're very vested in making sure that that's also a part of this dialogue. When it comes to them teaching our history, that's our job. We will teach our history. We will educate our families. We will educate our communities. Get out of our way. Give us the funding, because we pay tax dollars. I'm not asking you to educate our young people. I'm asking you to get out of our way and stop taking our resources and using them. And I'm asking other Black people to help us advocate so that we can decide what happens with our tax dollars in our school system for our learners. And so, you know, the guys down in Florida and the ones, I mean, this is nothing new. History is repeating itself. And when you know your history, you understand this has always been the case. We have to focus on building strong institutions so that we can begin to curate our own story and narrative.
There it is. There it is. Look, Kim Poole, I truly appreciate you. It is so good to reconnect with you. How can people get more information about the Freedom Ride? What is the website or the social media that folks can follow?
Please follow us on social media. I am so bad at social media. It's like homework. I said I wasn't born in this generation, but please follow us, facebook.com/teaching artist, one word. Facebook.com/teaching artist, one word. And I know Facebook is for old people now, but if you have a business, please like us from your business page. Facebook.com/teaching artist, one word. And I am accessible. I'm not up here on a platform. Call me on the phone. Send a text message first. I don't check voicemails anymore. 443-739-0941. And listen, we're willing to sponsor elders that were alive during the civil rights movement that will come with us to help tell this story and narrate it. So if you are an elder that was alive and active during the civil rights movement and you're vested in helping your story stay alive, please contact us. Call me, find a Facebook page, send a message, because we'll pay for your expenses. Please let us know.
Kim Poole, thank you so much for coming on the show. We got to bring you back, Kim, because you sound like you got a lot more to say, and we certainly want to provide a space and a platform for you. So Kim Poole, thank you so much. Checking in from the Teaching Artists Institute, one of the great founders of this fantastic program that is teaching the next generation about our struggle. Kim, thank you so much for being so good for the culture. We truly appreciate it.
Thank you, Farajii.
Absolutely, absolutely, my sister. All right, folks, we got to get out of here. I want to thank my brother Michael in Hotep. Make sure y'all check out his website at the AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com for classes and more information about their podcast and the great work that he's doing. But make sure you continue to show your support. You never know what kind of voices we get here on the culture, but we want to make sure we expose you to as many of our people's voices as possible, especially those who are bridging the gap between this generation and our struggle. All right, folks, that's going to do it for us. So make sure y'all do your due diligence. Go to blackstarnetwork.com. Follow us on social media. Download the app for free. And most importantly, continue to support us financially. Share the content. Your support of us means everything. So go to blackstarnetwork.com. Again, you can find us on social media at Black Star Network on IG and Twitter. And also you can find me on IG at The Real Farajii and on Twitter at Farajii. Stay tuned. Up next is RMU, Roland Martin Unfiltered. So stick around for that. But as always, never be afraid to challenge what's wrong. Stand for what's right while being yourself in the process. God willing, we'll talk tomorrow for another exciting edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Thank you for tuning in. Peace.